You stop replying to messages you used to answer in seconds. Conversations that once felt easy suddenly feel like work, and somewhere along the way, without ever deciding to, you started to disappear from people who used to know you best. Most people assume this means something's broken, that you've gotten cold or tired or maybe just difficult. But that's not the real story. Turns out, your brain isn't broken. It's just paying attention to things it used to ignore. Maybe you've stopped chasing certain friendships. Maybe conversations that used to feel exciting now feel oddly predictable, like you already know how they'll end before anyone opens their mouth. If that sounds familiar, you're not imagining it. Researchers who study self-awareness have found something consistent. As people become more attuned to their own patterns, they get sharply more selective about where their time and attention actually go. What looks like pulling away from the outside is usually something else entirely, a quiet sorting process happening on the inside. And by the time we're done here, you'll understand exactly what's driving it, including the last reason, which changes how you'll see almost every relationship you have left. Welcome back to InnerScript. Let's get into it. For a while, everything feels normal. Friends make you laugh. Compliments land the way they're supposed to. You take people at their word because you've never had a strong reason not to. Then something shifts. Small things start standing out. The smile that doesn't quite reach someone's eyes, the praise that carries a little too much edge underneath it, the friend who only texts when they need something. None of it is dramatic. That's exactly why it's so hard to unsee. Psychologists call this pattern recognition, and it isn't a personality quirk. It's a cognitive skill that sharpens with experience and self-awareness. The more data your brain collects on how people actually behave versus what they say, the faster it starts connecting dots that used to sit there, unconnected, ignored. Think of it like a volume knob someone else turned up without asking. Conversations that used to blend into the background now come through at full volume. Every inconsistency, every mismatch between what someone says and how they act. You didn't turn the knob. You just can't turn it back down. People don't look different once this kicks in. They feel different. And that gap between how someone presents and what your gut now registers is where the distance starts. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped confusing attention with actual connection. But there's something else. Something that shows up specifically once this new sensitivity settles in. And it has nothing to do with wanting to be alone. It has to do with running out of processing power. Every conversation now comes with extra work attached. While other people just hear words, you're also tracking tone, timing, body language, the gap between what's said and what's meant. That's not paranoia. That's your brain multitasking on something. Most people run on autopilot. Psychologists describe this kind of mental overload as cognitive load, the total amount of working memory a task demands. Normal conversation asks for a little. Constant social analysis asks for a lot, and unlike physical exhaustion, you can't always feel it building until you're already flooded. Picture 20 browser tabs open at once, each one still loading, each one draining a little more battery in the background. You can still use the laptop. It just runs hotter, slower, and shuts down sooner than it used to. That's why a party that once felt fun can now feel strangely draining before it even starts. Not because the room changed, because you're no longer running one tab, you're running 20. This isn't a flaw. It's what happens when awareness has a processing cost, and most people never think to ask what that cost is doing to you. This leads directly into the next pattern, and it's the one most people misread the hardest. You start noticing that people aren't always reacting to you. They're reacting to themselves, their own fears, their own unfinished business, and you just happen to be standing in the blast radius. The colleague who nitpicks your work might be sitting with quiet envy about their own stalled progress. The friend who talks over you in every conversation might not trust that anyone will listen if they stop. The person who needs constant reassurance from you might be terrified underneath it. of being forgotten. Psychologists call part of this projection when someone's internal state gets pushed outward and attached to whoever's closest, whether it fits or not. Once you can see that mechanism running in real time, you stop taking every jab personally. Not because you've gone numb, but because you finally understand where it's actually coming from. It's like standing on the other side of a glass wall for the first time. You can still see the room, still hear what's happening in it, but you're no longer standing inside the reaction. You're watching it happen to someone else's version of you, not the real one. This is closer to emotional intelligence than to detachment. The capacity to read what's underneath your own emotions and everyone else's without letting either one hijack your decisions. That's why you stop answering every argument. Stop replying to every message the second it lands. Stop chasing relationships that only function when you're available on demand. Not because you don't care, because you've learned that saying yes to the wrong person is quietly saying no to your own peace. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because this is the part people misread the most. They assume you enjoy being alone because you've started to dislike everyone else. That's almost the opposite of what's actually happening. You didn't fall in love with isolation. You fell in love with clarity. For the first time in a long time, silence stops feeling like a punishment. It becomes the one place where you can hear your own thoughts without 20 other people's expectations talking over them. There's real research behind this. Work on solitude, as distinct from loneliness, has found that time spent intentionally alone, not forced alone, can improve self-reflection, emotional regulation, and the quality of decisions people make afterward. Loneliness is solitude you didn't choose. This is solitude you did. Solitude works something like a circuit breaker. It doesn't fix whatever's overloaded in your life. It just trips before the whole system burns out and gives everything a chance to reset before you go back in. That's why so many people who look withdrawn from the outside are actually building something on the inside. Reading more, thinking more slowly, questioning beliefs they used to accept without checking where those beliefs even came from. And at some point, something quietly shifts. You stop needing validation from people who never really understood you in the first place, because real confidence was never built from applause. It was built from self-respect, one honest evening alone at a time. One day, you stop arguing with someone who already decided not to understand you. Another day, you stop showing up for a friendship that only exists when it's convenient for the other person. Then, without ever announcing it, you start building a life that doesn't run on constant approval anymore. From the outside, it looks sudden, like you changed overnight, like something happened. But inside, that decision had been growing quietly for months, sometimes years. And this is where most people get it completely wrong. They assume you pulled back because you think you're better than everyone else. Not even close. You just got specific about where your time, attention, and energy actually go, because all three are limited, and the people you keep close quietly shape who you become. So if you've caught yourself stepping back from certain people lately, here's the question worth sitting with. Not, am I becoming antisocial? Something heavier than that. Are you running away from people? Or are you finally walking toward the version of your life that was always supposed to be yours? Because sometimes the people who look like they're disappearing aren't lost at all. They're just finally being found by themselves for the first time in a long time. So where's the actual line? It's not between people who are cold and people who are warm. It's between people who perform connection and people who choose it deliberately with their eyes open. If you want to stay close to the parts of your life still worth keeping without burning out the part of you that finally learned to pay attention, 3 things tend to help. First, name the exhaustion before you act on it. Notice when you're running on 20 tabs instead of reacting from inside one of them. Second, protect solitude on purpose. Schedule it the way you'd schedule anything else that matters, instead of waiting for burnout to force it on you. Third, choose one relationship this week where you extend the benefit of the doubt anyway, not because you're naive, but because clarity, without occasional grace, just becomes isolation with better vocabulary. It kept you safe to notice all of it. It's what got you here, able to tell the difference between people who see you and people who just want something from you. That was never a flaw. That was the adaptation, working exactly the way it was supposed to. Which one of these hit first for you? Was it the exhaustion, or was it the silence, finally feeling like relief instead of loneliness? Tell me where you first noticed the shift. I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.